The Diary of Thoughts, Part 8. Friendship and Love, written by c.Pacheco. This part of my thoughts is going to become the object of constant development and change on the website as well as in the blog, as it represents a very vast field and its importance is immeasurable to life in society. This updating means that if you are willing to follow my thoughts about this subject, you'll eventually find more and more written ideas involved in this context every time you open this chapter online. I mentioned the word relationship on the last part of my thoughts. Learning to relate with others depends on other elements like feelings of love and feelings of friendship. Friendship is the highest level of love. One movie I saw and that reflects the union between two people is called Leaving Las Vegas, where we'll find two different personalities with different experiences and problems in their lives, still with the same level of acceptance that made their relationship so special, even in extreme situations. One key about relationships is acceptance, since this last one is fundamental to understand the personality and character of the other person. If we don't accept another person, we'll never be able to attain a real relationship of any kind. This understanding creates friendship and love, as long as both of these feelings will be unconditional and reciprocal. This understanding reflects the respect that we must have towards the other person that we love, and it should be reciprocal. Respect and acceptance are expressions of love, and the movie mentioned above is an example of that harmony that was attained within a very complicated context regarding individual existence. Love also implies friendship, and those two feelings are also linked to different states of mind and personal education and formation. Usually, simple and pure people, while loving others, achieve a certain level of humbleness that is manifested spontaneously, without anything behind their minds except to be what they are and coming from deep inside of them. A superb movie that gives exactly that image of simplicity and pureness is Forrest Gump with Tom Hanks, that reveal unconditional love, friendship and respect along with other great human virtues. There are different concepts and notions about love. Feelings are always very difficult to be explained, and surely they'll never be expressed by mathematical formulas written on a blackboard, like your IQ. I already mentioned that in this document. Some people say to us "I love you" without having the real notion about what it implies. Some people think that to love is to like, others mix love with sympathy, even pity. Also, some people, by the fact they love, exercise it in a bad way without realizing it. Some people say they love us, but they never look for us or miss us. Possessive parents can create serious problems in the natural development of their children. We can call it possessive love. Love can be addressed towards other people in a good or bad way. The exercise of love under a policy of selfishness can have damaging effects. Some people think that they love others, but they love mostly themselves, what they feel, what they think, like and want. Love can be in direct contradiction with the word respect. We can love somebody but not truly respect him or her. Love is also related to the notions about sharing and giving. Some people make gifts for someone they love, but according to their taste, sometimes knowing that their friends hate it. Love also has its different expressions. There is a look of love, there is a gesture of love or acts of love. The act of sex can be exercised with love or by simple animal instinct, the reason why some human beings are not as different as that of this other species. There can be hatred love, as the two extremes always touch. Love and hate are two different poles that make part of a relationship along with human behavior. Love and friendship are two different elements with different meanings, but they make part of the same family. It's called the family of feelings. Love doesn't forcibly imply friendship, but in general, true friendship is directly related to a form of love. Within families, there can be love, but sometimes friendship is not present. Parents can love their children without necessarily being their friends, and this just means that they have a lot to learn about relationships. But finally, there is this fundamental inner need for love, tenderness and affection that lives inside us all. There is this extraordinary movie, Phenomenon, with John Travolta and Keira Sedgwick, that demonstrates what I am talking about. There is no need to explain the meaning of this movie. The images speak for themselves and show how important, if not vital, to achieve a relationship that will bring us the necessary emotional balance and the needed motivation to keep on achieving goals and sharing them with the ones we love. This principle is extensive to feelings and their different forms of being manifested, from true friendship to pure love, never forgetting that friendship is the highest form of love. You'll never be able to love somebody without being a friend. Some people are convinced that they have friends by their side, but instead, they have just mere colleagues or fellow mates, mere acquaintances. I had an example regarding this subject and situation when someone I know came to my home and started talk about certain problems in his life. As an outsider, at a certain moment, I explained to him that friendship is entirely different from brotherhood. As the ex-military he was, I tried to present and express him my ideas by formulating a comparison between two different battlefields. I said to him, while you were in those battlefields, there were those who were considered as your brothers because you depended on them, but forgetting that they also depended on you, but they were not forcibly your friends. This thought means that there are limits to the bounds of friendship. Someone who pretends to be our friend just to maintain us in his dependency is not a friend. In fact, I met this friend in the middle of nowhere, actually in a pub, and since I have the passion for music, I quickly got the perception that this guy was a hell of a musician. His music was present in him, his gestures, the absent, still present the way he behaved while talking about music, a real artist. Affinities are very important if not crucial to attaining a friendship, as they establish links that are also connected to feelings, the mutual love for music, painting, writing and so on. Without affinities, there wouldn't be an approach between people, from political, social, artistic, religious and humanistic ideas and so on. But returning to the point and still talking about affinities, his passion for music was clearly expressed, as he was a real musician and not one of those who we can find in each corner adopting that form of art just for financial purposes. We can compare these last ones to those people who chose the medical career, not to save lives but to win money. In most cases they acquire a license to kill due to that same fact. As a passionate for music and the talent directly connected to that word, I realized that this friend of mine was just wasting the most important thing he had in his life. He was just wasting his talent, and by doing so, he was wasting his life, the gift that God gave in the first place. All this because of wrong notions about friendship and brotherhood, even concepts about loyalty. Being a real friend implies responsibilities, as friendship implies feelings, and these last ones can bless and hurt or create comfort and happiness to others. But it has to be reciprocal. As I said before, some parents think they are respecting their children just by the fact that they love them, but it's not as simple as that. Respecting others is an entirely different subject that we'll talk about later on, as there is a moment for everything. For me, it was painful to see a talent like his being under that situation of staying conditioned to his feelings of friendship and wrong ideas of loyalty. I explained to him that life always brings new open doors the moment he decides to shut certain ones that are no longer present in his inner world. Up to him to decide which door to open or close. Friendship is unconditional, but there are friends that take advantage and profit from that bond of loyalty without realizing that a friend is like our child, the one that we have to create to the world and not for ourselves. Friendship has to be reciprocal. Otherwise, it means that there is only one friend in the game. Due to their past and their education, some people don't accept friendship as a natural feeling. They are also afraid of it because, in fact, it is a very rare feeling to find in somebody else, mostly a stranger. We always have to give the benefit of the doubt about the true intentions involved in that kind of relationship, without being afraid and leaving time to consolidate it. A real friend is like a father that loves to see his son running towards life instead of putting him in a cage and calling him a friend. A friend is someone who feels happy while seeing a smile at the face of another friend. A friend is someone that never forgets about you, someone that always worries about you, someone who is loyal to you. A friend is the one who shares the things he loves the most with another friend. A friend is the one who gives and abdicates of his things to another friend. Some years ago I wrote something about friendship. Hank the Voice BEUKEMA reads from the Diary of Thoughts poems, written by c.Pacheco.
Friends. Being a friend is to know, to be with you, no matter the time, your happiness or your sadness. As friendship has no boundaries, barriers that separate you, that compares with the material world. Friendship is something vital, pure, and essential. As in love, it involves pain, joy, fantasy, to learn to accept without to blame, to know how to listen, to learn how to feel another being. friend. A word, a meaning, a value lost in time, an absent notion no longer present in society. Friendship is the necessity to find without attempting to conquer, a moment, a feeling, willing to share, disseminate your existence, your experience in the world. Is it so hard to find someone who does not kiss your feet for what you have, but for who you are? Someone that will really be with you. A true friend.
In life, we win some friends, and lose other ones, knowing that real friends will always be friends and that it's up to us to know who they are, look for them, care about them, love them the best we can, to keep them by our side. The secret is to identify who our real friends are, not that. In the end, we stay with mere acquaintances, and we miss the ones that loved us most but are no longer there because we just ignored them. It's beautiful in life to see old friends sitting on a bench and talking about their past, still sharing their friendship. What a beautiful vision. Some of the most representative examples about friendship are given when moments of solidarity arrives when least expecting it, not making us feel lonely and abandoned as that with our problems and deceptions in life. Finally, others around us feel the same as we do, and when they are real friends, they care. An incredible scene about friendship that reveals that solidarity is present in the movie Pirate Radio when real friends cared about another friend's delusion. Sometimes, people's verbal aggression can only mean the search for true friendship. Unfortunately, most of the time aggression translates other states of mind that don't match the word friendship. In 1 minute some people destroy relationships of love, friendship, and solidarity and union that were built during years just like that, just for their inner pleasure to affirm themselves the worst way we can imagine. Other people just can't communicate without using some sarcasm in their words, but this doesn't mean that they're not friends. It depends on our reception and the way they address us with those words that we have to interpret. Later on, we'll talk about insults, about the meaning of words. This kind of verbal aggression under a form of communication is a component that becomes a constant behavior in our daily lives, starting in a personal context as the family, extending itself to the whole society and every type of relationship connected with it, namely business, friendship and all possible related connections. It can become a friendly joke or an unfriendly abuse that can cause damage to our relationship with a friend or a member of our family, the ones we love after all. A great part of society ignores the fundamental role that affection and tenderness plays in a relationship, in a friendly context within the life of a couple, which is fundamental, and can even affect our intimate life. Additionally, and due to that same fact, they misunderstand the ones who can truly address those feelings towards the ones they truly love as family and friends, becoming most of the time objects of bad jokes, even insults. This behavior also represents a very primitive state of mind that normally has an origin in their unawareness about that incapacity they have of giving love, affection and tenderness to somebody else. But we also have to consider the reasons why they don't have that notion, or while having it, being unable to do differently. The past has to do with those situations as there are reminiscences that are tough to surmount, this considering some very terrible family contexts existing in some children's lives. We also have to consider that there are those who were born with that incapacity to deliver themselves to others, some of them always demanding that others will give themselves to them with a considerable degree of selfishness included in that attitude, of course. Returning to the subject related to the past of some children, we have to consider that even for adults it would be too simple to go to a psychologist and by the fact of obtaining all the logical explanations about our behavior, being able to overcome all those old obstacles. This issue is a very complex subject as it depends on each person's way to react, mostly to understand what is implied in that kind of emotional and psychological recovering. But independently from what I explained, there is this existing attitude of aggression that is never justified, as nobody, even to the ones who practice it, likes to become mistreated by somebody else, which means there is some awareness about that fact. Notions of good and bad are present in every single attitude in life, which implies the consciousness about it. Aggression can be practiced in a physical, verbal or emotional way, always remaining one of the saddest existing words in the dictionaries. Emotional and physical abuse is practiced in millions of homes. We'll talk about it later on. I wrote something about that kind of communication, implying humiliation, minimization, even insults that causes misery and pain everywhere and to millions of people around the world when wrongly addressed. Here is the poem, Aggression, narrated by BEUKEMA, master of the spoken word.
Aggression. Aggression is connected to deception, all the sadness, the suffering that you can find in life. Aggression is the lack of love, the lack of the stars above, is the lack of feeling, is the lack of trust that will survive the dust and will live along with the wind. Aggression is the contradiction of every single conviction about human evolution. We need a revolution to change people's minds. Aggression is the disguise of people who think they're wise, but finally they are poor and empty, as in their soul they have no single goal, unable to give love. Aggression is the symbol of stupidity, the ignorance, the futility of some living beings that only look like humans. Aggression is to mistreat your wife, your children, without respecting the balance of life and its origins. Aggression is like beating your mother, like looking for another way to be born, not from love, but from the storm. Aggression is the lack of respect without any regret, the absence of dignity, the absence of simplicity that translates life. Aggression can destroy your joy and the happiness of others, along with sisters and brothers. Aggression is the worst disgrace that happened to the human race. That's why we'll leave no trace about our existence. It's all because of aggression.
In our lives, it's very rare that we can find friends. We can find lots of acquaintances that don't match that level of feelings, as friendship is nothing but love in its higher form. It also depends on our perspective about friendship and the personal feelings we relate to that word. Also, never forget that there are friends, and there are friends, those last ones we usually find in bars or pubs and are ready to share their problems and frustrations with us, mostly trying to drown us along with it. Those are the friends that start talking bad about us the moment we park our car, the moment they're with us, but while we are or they think we're drunk, and finally when we leave the premises. This behavior defines the type of friends that we have to learn to avoid in our lives, as they can be identified miles away. The kind of friends that are there to ask us for help, but never there to give us the minimal support in any occasion of our lives. These are the kind of friends that have a nice smile and sometimes are even very polite, but in reality, they hate everything that we are and what we represent. Sometimes, if nonsense is incremented with malice, jealousy and hypocrisy, it can become a very dangerous weapon. It was always like that, as this abnormality makes an intrinsic part of the natural character of some human beings. Fortunately, not every person is this way. Fortunately that there are real friends that we can count on and that never let it go, defending us in any circumstance, which always creates a new hope for the understanding of what friendship is all about. In my life, I found few friends, but the ones I found were true friends. Some friends were beside me throughout my life. During my teenage years, I shared my moments along with two people who later on would make part of my professional and family life. There was a friend that shared all the moments like a real brother, related with the musical ideals of that generation along the time that he spent at my parents' place. I still remember at what point our passion for music represented a fundamental link in our lives, and that was expressed when I used to send him some reel-to-reel tapes while he was in the middle of a battlefield during the colonial war in Africa. Later on, he became my brother-in-law, and further on we went separate ways, always without forgetting the friendship that bounded our existence. Another great friend of mine was someone from the times of school with whom I shared lots of thoughts along with musical moments, but mostly we spent hours talking about every single kind of subject that you could imagine. He also became a member of my family and vice versa, and we shared precious moments of our existence all together. As his intellectually matched my concepts and visions about society and life, along with the social status that both of us occupied at that time, we made a kind of unbeatable team that nobody could dare to defy. Later on, we met in our professional careers, and today we're still changing ideas through the internet, always keeping the same spirit that prevailed all along those years. But like anybody else, I also had my deceptions about friendship. Like anyone, I met people who pretended to be friends, but they were not. It's up to us to identify the kind of friendship that the other person manifests towards us. It's the experience that will prove at what level another person can be or not be our friend. Some people promise us favors, but they are not friends. They are just trying to buy us, in other words, to have us in their pockets. As friendship is never for sale because it's a feeling, those people will never be able to buy feelings as mere merchandise. Some friends have a nice smile, but they are jealous of what we are and what we do. Sometimes they try to put us in the same basket where they belong. Some 20 years ago I met a person that I considered as a friend. He came from a wealthy family, properly educated, respectful, and certainly with old traditions acquired while living and being raised on that refined ambience. As friendship consolidated, we spent lots of time together, the two of us or along with our spouses. Moments of happiness and friendship were shared all along almost 20 years. One of my policies about friendship implies the word truth as in any other type of relationship. For me, a friend cannot expect from another friend that he will tell him strictly what he wants to hear. On the contrary, a friend has to alert another friend against things that he finds wrong or can bring them suffering, pain, or other problems, all this along with things that he doesn't forcibly agree. By the fact of doing it, he's not about to offend or minimize the other person, but instead, he is trying to protect his friend. In this case, I always told my friend about the things that could change in his life if he continued to act in a certain way, the risks implied on that behavior as losing his wife, losing his friends, and finally losing his job. After his divorce, this friend started a whole procedure of exaggeration related to his habits that later on became a dependency. As we know, alcohol is one of the causes of human degradation in society. Some people arrive at the point of losing everything and everybody around them, starting with their dignity. But sometimes, this process of self-degradation brings some truths living within them as they are no longer able to disguise their real character, their weakness, their inner me, if you want to phrase it that way. Even though, when you are a friend, you have the capability to try to understand and give the necessary help, but sometimes, the help you provide is the object of wrong interpretations and thoughts as they're no longer able to interpret it that way. Then it depends on you, if you're a real friend, to ignore it using your understanding, your true friendship after all. After all, this person that I considered a friend expressed himself in very different ways that he did not do before, since he adopted a policy of injury and jealousy towards everybody just because they didn't play his game anymore. After all those years, this person showed that the friendship that was supposed to exist was nothing but his necessity to spend time with someone. He was just using friendship as an excuse to kill his time. His scale or notion about the word friendship just disappeared when his friends didn't meet his expectations. Even favors that he had done for me as a friend were made public, among other strange people who for him were also that kind of friend that he needed to have. His inner problems and complexes were exposed while getting too drunk, forgetting about everything that he always stood for: values, principles, education, even dignity. After all, that friend was a fake, at the origin of a spoiled education, showing an image that didn't match his real personality and character, even using the name and money of his family to show something that he had completely lost, maybe never had: dignity and honor. He became just another dependent trying to draw himself into alcohol, his contradictions and inner problems that he was not able to assume and solve himself. Due to his new character, he used a strategy to create his victims as targets of bad jokes and injuries, and by that fact he tried to call attention to those victims, hiding his non-assumed failures and real tendencies. Later, this behavior made him lose his family, namely his wife, also what made him lose his dignity. Every time I meet that friend, he's always keeping that same smile, but he knows that I know that he is crying inside as he is in conflict with his soul, and it's sorrowful to see somebody who reached that spiritual state, that state of mind. I'm far away from being a wealthy man in material terms, but it's because of examples like this that I feel a much richer man. This example means that people are living in a confrontation with themselves. They become miserable by that fact and they try to drag us in that world of unhappiness. It's funny because, a long time ago in Portugal, I had also this friend of mine that invited me to work at his companies, as his family held a business in Lisbon. I accepted and ran all of his administrative sectors of those companies. All along my professional activity I made acquaintances with his family, and I became a part of them, as his father considered me as a son. I had unforgettable moments of my life along with those people until my friends started to destroy everything that was built by his ancestors as a result of a divorce, and that fact originated all inner problems and conflicts. Alcohol and bad habits came into the existence of that young person, and at that point, I watched the actual destruction of a financial empire due to that fact. Later on in this book, there is a chapter dedicated to this subject, namely dependency and everything that is implied by this word. It means that there are people who concentrate themselves to the idea that the whole world turns around them. In these two last cases, both friends lost their notions about self-esteem and respect towards their families and friends and everything those words represent. As I was responsible for the family business, and by the fact that I told him and advised him about what to do, I became his enemy instantly. Truth and lie are constants in this existing platform of communication, sometimes leading to misunderstanding and hurting people we love in the first place. About truth and lie, we'll talk later. Meanwhile, I can say to you that we can tell everything to a person we love in a very kind way, trying to express ourselves using the right words, avoiding hurting somebody else's feelings. It depends on the way we understand some situations and the reception of our message by the other person, our friend, the one we want to protect. Based on my life's experience and in spite of the fact that I committed lots of mistakes like anybody else, I wrote a small story to a very dear and precious friend of mine that translates the care and affection that I had for her. It goes like this. There was this man that had her picture on his wall right in the middle of others that reflected his whole life. That picture spoke for itself as it showed her face engraved in a beautiful rose, as if that face was caught by her life, an image that was painted as a flower, a mirror of what she was and what she meant in his eyes. As life brought this beautiful soul to share the moments on the road of this man, he started telling her about his life. He narrated his experiences, all the adversities, obstacles, all the risks, and traps implied in the jungle that it is present to our eyes and that we have to face and challenge before it destroys us. That same picture was standing on her wall, right beside her bed, as if he was always present, looking over her, taking care of her, protecting her, as if he was looking at her while she was sleeping within the heart of the night. Every time she came to his house, she stared at that same picture hanging on his wall, and always thought about the difference between that pure image and the other ones of her that were present on another person's wall, not with her beautiful face, not representing the wonderful soul she was. Over there, on the other wall, her picture was lost in the middle of other ones, representing a clear degradation and futility of spirit, along with an entirely different message, representing an entirely different meaning and feeling. At a certain moment, she realized what those pictures hanging on the other wall might mean, exposing her image, her name, even her dignity to the eyes of people who just couldn't understand her, what she represented. The kind of people who would show her picture along with all the other ones hanging on that same wall to their friends, using all their distorted minds trying to prove something they could never feel, nor do. One day she came to his place carrying those pictures with her. As she finally understood who this man was and what he represented to her life, she hugged him. She tenderly kissed him, showing all her love, tenderness and affection, and both started to cry. Later on that same day, they lit their fire and burned those pictures, the burden she carried on her shoulders and soul, and they started to laugh again. c.Pacheco, Luxembourg, EU, the 11th of December 2011. These words only represent the purity of feelings. At the same time, they relate to a title that is directly connected to another level, a dimension that is located in a higher spiritual range and has so much to do with me. I guess it's not easy to understand as we have to feel it, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. The reason why I'm writing this is that there are always some people who misunderstand words as they don't understand its extension and meaning, sometimes simply because they don't feel it that way, or they feel it the wrong way. That kind of misunderstanding can cause enormous problems, as normally incomprehension does in most cases and situations in life. But the most important thing about this scenery was the relationship attained and based on pure feelings of friendship and love. Life is nothing but a big crossroad where we find nice people and people who are not as they should be. It makes a big difference when we're lucky to find the right ones, but it also depends on us to identify our real friends. As music always expressed my life, I thanked her presence and her sharing of my existence through the sounds that represented my soul and my feelings. These were some examples of the type of friendship that we have to care about or only avoid, never giving up to give a chance to a new friendship. It is called the school of life. We learn not only by our experiences and mistakes but also with other people's problems, errors and failures, as we're not alone in what concerns these subjects. We're all the same and made in the eyes of God. There is nothing perfect in life, which means that we are not perfect, though we finally have to accept and forgive each other, and mostly if we are true friends, we do. Due to this kind of problem in society, we sometimes forget about the consequences of our behavior, as we don't exist isolated from everyone and everything that surrounds us, and our actions might interfere with other people's happiness. One day, due to a small conflict of communication, I got deprived temporarily from a friend that I truly love, as these problems always bring disunion between people, and normally the ones who don't deserve to be punished, actually are. In this particular situation, I also confirmed my opinion that most people are submitted to rules and patterns of behavior, as this friend of mine was not feeling comfortable anymore to be with me while this small issue lasted, still knowing deep inside of her that we both needed that friendship that spontaneously happened between us two. Friendship is something that is created with time, but there are some that transcend that situation, as a certain identification of spirits is automatically done without any explanation. As we are all submitted to that universal motion, I think there are some people who just meet out of time, that's all. This poem I wrote talks precisely about that. Hank the Voice BEUKEMA reads from the Diary of Thoughts poems, written by c.Pacheco.
I saw you, two friends. I saw you today, and I wished I could stay right beside you. Through the window, I saw your eyes, looking for the skies that should be there, be present everywhere, every moment of your life. I saw your sadness, your tiredness, your inner will to look, to say something to me, to avoid the needle that is breaking your heart. Two kisses crossed the air, two friends' hearts in despair. By not being together, feelings will last forever, in spite of the distance. We could walk like two children along the shore. They just ignore, they don't understand, being hand in hand. Two kids running wild, still, like father and child. They will never destroy our moments of happiness and joy. Every moment we had, every word we said. I saw that you saw my goodbye. Our eyes started to cry, looking for friendship, true love, true feelings, the roots, the beginnings of life. From Carlos, with true friendship and love.
But as life always has an invisible balance, that same friendship that was destroyed by some people who didn't understand it, was compensated by the real friendship of someone that was always there beside me, along the way, through my ups and downs in life and during these last 20 years. This person is someone with whom I discussed numerous hours about every single subject, from art, philosophy, science, sociology, religion, politics, existential issues, and whatever you can imagine. He was, and he is someone that accepted my faults and assumed his mistakes. This friend was and is someone with honesty of character and is a perfect example of dignity. He didn't worry about the common necessity to find advantages in a friendship and helped me a lot in several difficult situations in my life without being concerned about his risk of doing so. Someone who understood the meaning about friendship and didn't have any problem to search for that feeling in his life. Later on in my life and after my beloved wife passed away, a tragic fact that I was forced to accept as life makes us face sufferance along with joy, I met this beautiful soul that replaced, in a certain sense, the lack of affection and tenderness that I felt and always feel. In fact, she replaced my daughter at my wife's funeral, and that is something that I will never forget until the last moment of my life. With time and by participating at the grammatical revision of the present text, she finally learned to know me, who I am and what I represent to some people's lives. I'm truly honored that God gave me the opportunity to meet her. Once again, there was this invisible balance that exists around us, and that brings us tenderness and affection after misery and pain, what we can call the natural law of compensations. These were just some few examples of friendship and everything that it implies as moments of joy, pain, along with forgiveness and understanding. Without these two last elements, friendship would be harder to practice, even more difficult to save as a feeling. Never give up friendship. Never give up everything that you believe. Friendship is unconditional and unlimited. Friendship is the higher manifestation of love as it implies compassion. You can't find real friends without being a true friend. That's why friendship is so special. That's why friendship is so magical. The Diary of Thoughts, end of Part 8.